The ministry of peace concerns itself with war, the ministry of truth with lies, the ministry of love with torture, and the ministry of plenty with starvation. These contradictions are not accidental, nor do they result from ordinary hypocrisy. They are the deliberate exercises in doublethink. Just Orwellian fiction, right? It could never happen in America. Decide for yourself. The Patriot Act concerns itself with the most unpatriotic of acts, allowing searches and seizures without judicial warrant. Many modern legislative enterprises engage in doublespeak. Often, in fact, the more jingoistic and Pollyanna the title, the more likely that basic rights and principles of free men are under assault. Instead of patriotic rejection of tyranny, we are asked to know your neighbor in order to report upon your neighbor. Your local bank is commanded to report suspicious activities to the feds. In the past decade, over 8 million suspicious activities reports have been filed. National security letters, basically warrants without judicial review, have been used to snoop on hundreds of thousands of Americans. Daily, millions of travelers are subject to invasive searches without probable cause. In the name of patriotism, Americans' emails and phone calls are monitored. Not just communications deemed of probable cause by an independent judiciary, but gazillions of communications. The number can't be revealed because it's a state secret, but the number is beyond normal cognition and beyond normal computational prowess. A gazillion is not an overstatement. When Winston renounced Julia, I cried. Okay, well, not the first time I read 1984, but the second time, 30 years later. Real men don't cry, or so they say, but when Winston finally renounces Julia, I cried. The point at which we renounce what we love is a point when grown men should cry. The first time I read 1984, I was profoundly sad the entire read, but I was a teenager, and teenagers are messed up for no reason at all. You know, the whole Holden Caulfield thing. The next time I read 1984, I was a 40-something, and I had experienced love and could understand what it could be like to renounce the person you loved. What would it take for you to renounce the one you love? What would it take for you to renounce your rights as free men and women? We fought for over 800 years to restrain the state. From the Magna Carta on, our tradition has been to fight, to limit the power of the state. Would it take starvation and beatings to give up on your right to property? Would it take rats pressed up against your face to get you to renounce your right to a jury trial? Or would you let fear alone cause you to relinquish your guarantee to due process? Will we let fear of terrorism allow us to give up our most basic of liberties? When the Defense Authorization Bill came up in the Senate and the House, amendments were offered to say that no U.S. citizen could be held indefinitely without a jury trial. The Senate voted 55-45 to allow indefinite detention of American citizens. We have become Orwellian without even knowing it. The right to trial by jury was lost not in some grand battle, no cinematic final stand, but with a whimper and barely a murmur. It took hundreds of years to force monarchs to allow trial by jury, and now it is vanishing with barely a fight. But just when the realization began to settle in, a flicker of rebellion occurred. A particularly zealous senator wanted more, not just no trial by jury, but nullification of the jury's verdict. We were asked to amend the NDAA to allow indefinite detention of defendants found innocent by a jury of their peers. The amendment sponsors wanted to limit the right to trial by jury by voice vote, a process usually reserved for non-controversial resolutions. It was late by Senate standards, about 9 o'clock. I was accused of obstructing the proceedings. Everyone was tired and wanted to go home. It only takes one senator to force a recorded vote. I hesitated, but in the end I insisted there must be a vote. There was no debate granted. Proponents would vote based on the fear that we must give up our liberties to be secure. And opponents would vote, with Franklin, that those who give up their liberties for security will have neither. I was told by the sponsors of the bill, Senators Levin and McCain, not to worry, that they would remove the amendment in conference committee. Levin said the amendment only reiterated current law. I responded incredulously, current law allows people to be found innocent by a jury and then still to be held indefinitely? How can that be true? And if it is true, shouldn't we do something to stop it? I faltered and almost capitulated. I drifted toward the chamber exit, and then I turned and called, "I demand the yeas and nays." Amazingly, virtually all the Democrats and a handful of Republicans, including John McCain, voted to kill this assault on 800 years of jurisprudence. When I first read 1984 and A Brave New World in high school, I had trouble relating to them. I understood and was wary of Big Brother, but took consolation in the fact that government did not have two-way televisions to monitor your every action. Government didn't have drone surveillance to monitor your every move. The desire by man to control his fellow man has always existed, as has the desire by fellow man to resist. Fellow man always had places to hide. Fellow man always had places to flee. One's thoughts, one's books, one's private actions were hard to control, discern, and disrupt. Dystopian novels were just that, bad utopias, but not practically possible. One could always sigh in relief that such surveillance, such invasion of privacy was not technologically possible. Until now. Now we have the technology. Drones that measure less than an inch, weigh less than an ounce, and hover noiselessly outside your bedroom window are not a dystopian future, but today's reality. The individualist who feared 1984 when it was written in 1949 need now shout from the top of his or her lungs, for technology has made the unthinkable thinkable.